Welcome to the bi-weekly ZKsycn delegate call. We have quite a few items to get through today, so we'll jump right in. Actually have quite a few just pretty quick proposal updates that we wanted to mention at the start of this call before we dive into our continuation of the TPP Builder presentation series. Before we actually do that, I did want to share or mention the incident report that was published on Friday of last week in regards to the compromised admin key to the unclaimed airdrop tokens. I'm assuming most of you have seen this already, but if you haven't, you can go check it out. The link is in the chat and also on the agenda as well. As mentioned in the incident report, there is a proposal in the works, and in fact, it's actually in the finalization phase that will be shared on the forum likely tomorrow, but for sure by the end of the week, that offers a path forward for the Security Council, who currently is holding the reclaimed or recovered fund tokens or assets, to convert the ETH into ZK and return the transfer the control of that ZK amount to the token assembly. So that proposal, like I said, will be published very soon, so keep an eye on the forum for that. I'll also obviously share it in the delegate channel as well on Telegram when it's published. But yeah, just wanted to call that out so you folks are aware and can keep an eye out for it. Any questions on that before we move on to the proposal updates? Great, okay. So next on the list, we have ZIP, just a few quick updates on the active proposals. So we have ZIP 9, which is already passed token assembly approval, the Guardian legal review. It's with the Security Council right now. Alicia said to share that to expect an update from them tomorrow. They always post in the thread on the forum for the proposal, so they're probably there. I'll also share a message in the ZK, the delegate channel as well, the Telegram channel as well, once that message is shared confirming L1 execution. So expect that to be done tomorrow. Next up, we have ZIP 10, still waiting on the final call data for this one. This got delayed, I think as we mentioned on the proposal review call last week, this got delayed just given the time and attention that was needed for the incident investigation and report finalization. So this should be up, submitted on chain by the end of the week, this week. And then finally, just for quick active proposal updates, is the TPP for the ZIP Audit Reimbursement Program, or ZARP. This is also expected to go on chain this week, also likely tomorrow. Just waiting on the final green light is my understanding to submit this on chain from the Security Council. So yeah, that will also be coming on chain this week. So keep an eye out for that. Any questions on the active proposal updates for ZIP 9, ZIP 10, or the TPP for ZARP? Okay, great. Then I don't know if you guys caught this. This was just shared. There is an update for next steps on the Ignite program cancellation that was just published on the forum. Let me share it in the chat here too. So this it's like a response to the initial ZKsycn Ignite cancellation post that was posted a few weeks ago or months ago. The post just basically confirms the steps that have already been taken to shut down the Ignite program, and also confirms the next step, which is to shut down or remove or deactivate the cat minters that are related to the Ignite program. So they outline it a little bit here, but the proposal, to my understanding, will also be posted this week. So lots on the forum. So lots of proposal actions happening this week. So be sure to keep an eye either on the forum or in the Delegate Telegram channel for updates there. And all of the details on how exactly the cap miners will be deactivated or the minter rule will be revoked is shared in the proposal. It previews it here as well. But yeah, any questions on this? I can try to answer to my best ability. Otherwise, obviously, always feel free to respond directly on the forum so the Ignite team can respond there as well. No? Okay, great. Then we will move right along into everybody's favorite series, our TPP Builder presentations. If you are new here or have not witnessed the series yet, this is a series of presentations from teams who are building tools or building blocks, as we like to call them, for token mechanics. Over the past few weeks, the past few delegate calls, as you see here, we've had quite a few teams present their tool or their product and demonstrate how it could be used in a token program. And it's been a lot of fun to see everybody's presentations and see the real life tangible examples of how these tools could be used in a program within the ZKsycn governance system. So yeah, it's been a great series. Today will probably be the last few presentations, at least for now. I would say I would never like officially close this down. Any TPP builder, any team who posts in the TPP builder category who's working on building blocks for token mechanics is always welcome to come and present on these calls. But for now, we don't have any other additional folks signed up for the coming weeks, so this will probably be the last two presentations in the series today. So yeah, we can jump right into it. I will pass the mic over to Dr. Nick to present for Factory Labs.
Hiya. I think we're going to double act it, actually. Matt, you're there, Annie?
Hey.
Right. I think you're going to throw the slides up, mate.
You guys,
how long have we got, Shelby? 10 minutes?
Yes. Yep. About 10 minutes and then 5 minutes for Q&A.
Okay. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So yeah, I'm Matt. I'm one of the co-founders alongside Nick of Factory Labs, and today we're going to introduce how Factory Labs specializes in building decentralization tools, and they be geared at creating efficient token programs on ZKsycn. So who we are, sorry, 2 seconds. Factory Labs, we're a London-based blockchain and R&D company. And our core mission is to improve how groups coordinate and make decisions using blockchain technology. So we develop practical governance and token tools. Now, our mission for ZKsycn is specifically around providing the essential foundations needed to build successful and robust token programs. So this means enabling TPPs through automation and ideally trying to minimize governance overhead. So far, our work with ZKsycn TPPs is we're actively engaged in the ecosystem. We have conducted a review recently of the Ignite program, specifically looking for ways to automate and improve TPPs. And one of the key outcomes of this has been the ZK trigger contract, which is part of the Minter mods. So we're currently developing this, and think of it as like a secure pipeline for connecting the cap minter framework directly to where tokens need to go for a TPP, whilst reducing custody risk and coordination failure. So we're doing this via our toolkit, Factory DAO, which is basically a suite of decentralized tools that anybody can deploy with a TPP or without TPP. They're effectively trust minimized, modular and audited smart contract system. So I'm going to hand over to Nick now so he can go into a bit more detail on those.
Nick,
Oh, I'm muted, aren't I? Yeah, so we've been building these for quite some time. We've been effectively trying to move DAOs into the sort of next era, if you like, since about 2020. And our philosophy of this is not a million miles away to what the TPP sort of framework is converging on. We believe in sort of modular primitives that can stitch together and be composable. Our vision for this is still that sort of factory DAO becomes a DAO that launches DAOs. But in the sort of meantime, we're offering these up as kind of tools that can stitch into protocol DAOs, and other DAOs can use them. So what I'm going to do is dive into a few of these mechanisms. Since we're talking about mechanisms, I think we can sort of dive into that. So let's jump onto the next slide, Matt. So I've built some kind of mechanism design slides here that kind of explain what the mechanism is. The one that I'm sort of most passionate about is the coordination problems or reaching social consensus in distributed systems. So one of the key things that we're trying to solve here is decentralizing the proposal creation process. So typically you've got, like, you know, a team makes it into a proposal, and it's quite disconnected from the broader set of people who participate in the DAO. To do this, I've sort of developed a mechanism I call semantic ballot voting. So if you think of a ballot with semantic tags on, a semantic tag is just meaning, could be anything, could be a set of proposals, could be a bunch of just ideas, whatever it might be, could be images, whatever you want it to be. Each participant in the group then gets a budget of voting power, spin on quadratic voting. So basically, let's say everyone gets 100 voting credits. They can then spend them on each tag, effectively sorting it. So this is, if anyone's around long enough, you might remember token curated registries, which was an idea of basically you can spend tokens on sorting a list. This is basically a vision of that. So you can have like NFTs as voting identities. And if you aggregate this across a DAO, you basically sort everyone's preferences into a signal that the DAO can then interpret on what everyone wants. Under the hood, you get this interesting little data set, which is it's actually a hypergraph, which is where the nodes are kind of meaning and people, and how much people have voted on these things clusters them in an interesting way. And we're now looking at using LLMs to basically dig through that data set and basically say, this is what everyone wants. And that effectively creates a signal for builders to be able to go and respond to it. Okay, next up, I think we've got, yeah, so this is what it looks like. If you go back a little quick, we've got, this is effectively, we fought Snapshot back in the day, about 3 or 4 years ago. It's actually going to look very different at the moment, but effectively it's an off-chain voting solution. So I'll quickly show you what each of these apps looks like. So I mentioned there that effectively one of the things that we're trying to solve for is moving away from one token, one vote. This lends itself to, you know, basically the internal team and investors controlling every DAO. So how do we sort of decentralize that? One of my sort of paradigms is that we should be thinking about subsidiarity in sub DAOs. So let's say we build a community of people who are experts in smart contracts or auditing or marketing or any of these things. Then within that, you can shape the power structure of the DAO. We built this in mind for when NFT launches were a massive thing. And, you know, one day, maybe they'll come back again. And if so, you, as a builder, you might be interested in issuing some NFTs. This is actually a super interesting mechanism in that we've got, it's Merkle tree based. We can have effectively like 10 parallel NFT sales, each with their own distribution contracts. So you can basically gate ranges of an NFT to go to particular subcategories of a DAO, for example, and then potentially even capitalize, like say 10 sub DAOs with their own NFTs based on people buying into them. And at the end here, you can see that there's a little dynamic price discovery for these NFTs. So you can sell these at, let's say, 5 different sub-series of an NFT at different price points. We can have different eligibilities. You can mint 3 at 1 ETH in this DAO, 5 at 1 ETH in this one, 3 at 0.5 ETH in this one. So you can price them separately. And then if you want, you can have a dynamic price discovery for the NFTs at the end through a thing we call the continuous auction. So effectively how that looks like at front end, if you go on to the next one, Matt, we can see like effectively it's a minting module. We've got this, you might see a little traffic light thing there. That was for brokering lots of people trying to mint an NFT at once. We can put essentially traffic lights on it. And this stops people trying to mint something that's already in the mempool. So it goes amber when it's been minted, transactions in the mempool, and it stops people getting wrecked and losing their gas fees. And effectively this sort of module brokers all of that. So if you're interested in minting any kind of NFTs, SBTs, this is a permissionless system that we can customize for you. Okay, next up, you've got your DAO, which might have NFT-based governance. You might have a treasury of assets that are reserve assets. You might be bootstrapping a DAO from the ground up. So this is a module called Vault, which effectively allows you to do this thing I call cliff linear vesting. Classic thing, like allows you to do token streaming, but this is like a super secure smart contract. It's like 28 lines of code, and it's built for storing like huge chunks of tokens in perpetuity, or until the end of a vesting contract. So that's basic token streaming. Classic Merkle drop / Merkle lock, we call it, which is basically, yes, we can do airdrops as a service with this. I still think we might be the only people who can do massified custom streaming of massified vesting. So with this, you can do 1 million vests where each person in it has a different schedule. So different token amount, different schedule for 1 million people is possible with that mechanism. And one that I'm very sure that people haven't cracked yet is the next one, Matt, which is we call Merkle Resistor. And what this allows you to do is to say, here's 1 million people, each of which have a vest, but you can effectively decide how many tokens you get by how long you vest. So I call this commitment vesting. So if you vest for a year, you get more tokens. If you want them all now, you get, say, 10% of them. And we can do that like at scale for any number of people. So that's a sort of screen of what that looks like. Little slider for n numbers of people. Yeah, go on to the next one. So we've got 2 staking solutions. One of them I call Basic Pool. So designed this to generate what I call most basic yield, which is basically everyone apes into a box and you can set the APR at a fixed rate. If you remember this sort of DeFi summer era, everyone apes into the box and everyone yield goes to 0 as everyone keeps jumping in. There's a primitive in here I call literally APY, because it locks in the yield at the point at which you enter the box, and at any point you can come out of it. And this integrates with Influence, so we can have basically like token staking based governance system in that. So yeah, next up, this one's the wackiest thing that I ever designed, which involves harbinger taxes. So basically this allows people to essentially, as a price discovery for who gets the yield, and the DAO can then change the emission rates for the pools. So that emission curve you see there, essentially the yield drops to 0 and then bumps back up to its highest amplitude and iterates like this. And what this allows you to do is have a DAO to tune its emission schedules. And instead of it just being free money, people have to basically pay a fee to stay in the pool. And that's why it's harbinger taxes. If you beat the fee, you can kick someone out and take their yield. We call that sort of resident pool. So yeah, that's what that looks like. You can see the little emission shield, emission schedule decaying and people auctioning their way into it. Yeah, next up we've got, I think this is a massively better mechanism than the silly bonding curves we're using for issuing tokens at the moment, because effectively that creates this mechanisms where snipers get a guaranteed jump on the tokens and then they're out in 3 blocks. This is a mechanism for like starting a new token with an iterated price discovery. So it goes up, it's a gradual batch auction where blocks of tokens increase in price and supply and then decay and iterate over time. So if you go next, you can see what that looks like. You get this kind of like iterated buy orders, and you get the average weighted buy price determines the listing price. So this effectively creates a kind of fair launch scenario that defeats snipers, basically. So we have an open price discovery of new tokens. Okay. So yeah, I'm pretty much wrap it there, but like basically each of these are, most of those have made it to factory contracts. Our goal is to basically make these permissionless systems that anyone can use as kind of public goods. So they could become primitives in TPPs. They will integrate into a kind of pathway of tokens. You can gate them with proofs and have only certain people be in an auction or a pool or things like that. They're all audited. And yeah, we're happy to be technical partners on any TPPs. I know there's some people out there looking for sort of technical people to team up with them on thing, which we did with Areta, who are coming up after us. And yeah, I think one thing I will say is we built a lot of this about 3 or 4 years ago. We've just finished updating it all to the latest libraries and onboarding stuff. So if you want to have a look at us, come and book a demo with us. So yeah, I think that's pretty much us. And we can leave it for questions.
Great, thank you, Matt and Dr. Nick. I feel like we probably could have done an entire call, hour-long call for each of the diagrams you showed. Or I would have loved to have an hour-long call for each of them to dive into them, but it was super interesting. Any questions for Matt or Nick?
One question from my side. So I'm quite curious. So from what you guys have kind of seen, where on-chain orgs are headed today, like not thinking about ZKSync, but thinking about the broader ecosystem, what do you think are kind of like some of the major trends? For example, I know Arbitrum was talking about a proposal for, Arbitrum aligned entities. And I'm kind of curious from your side across different on-chain organizations, like what are you kind of seeing in terms of kind of macro market level trends for the next year or so?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we're broadly seeing a re-centralization of DAOs at the moment. I think the way I've been thinking about this is that we've tried to do kind of radical transparency and pluralism in DAOs without the tools for it. So basically, everyone's tried to, like, this is all the way up to the macro level with Ethereum. We're seeing this with EOF at the moment, right? We've had teams building in a direction for 3 years, and we've got these plural development trajectories. And we tried to be more plural than the mechanisms and governance systems that we've got. And consequently, everyone's winding back to slightly more centralized approaches. So like the aligned entities thing in Arbitrum is a kind of archetype of that. So I hope to see it bounce the other way. I think we'll have this swing back to centralization. I hope that will trigger a re-decentralization with a greater commitment on the tooling requirements for this. So we've tried to do this without the tools for it, and consequently it's been a mess. So that, like, this is where we needed these tools like years ago. Sadly, there hasn't been a commitment like to actually build the DAOs, the DAO next era of DAOs, if you like. But I do think better social consensus systems, AI agents coming into the mix to be able to play a big part in. So one of the ways that we're using influence there is to aggregate the minds of many people and build an AI agent from the data lake that it creates. And effectively, I think that will enable a lot more and empower a lot more people to take part in DAOs. So yeah, re-centralization with a hopeful, decentralization and centralization goes in swings over eras, like sometimes hundreds or thousands of years. The goal for us has always been we'll hit the decentralization piece a little bit quicker. So that's my sort of current take on that. Hopefully we'll have the tools in place to be able to do the swing back and don't just stick at centralization. But crypto rarely surprises me towards the positive, I have to say. So let's hope we see it. People like yourself, Rafa and Shelby, will lead us down the golden path, I hope.
Aw, that's sweet. We would love to help contribute to that vision that you just outlined, Nick. I think it also really reflects in the work that you just presented, the focus on the modularity and the kind of finite customization that will be needed in this tooling that will be required to kind of get us to this place. Every ecosystem, every protocol, every community is so different and has very different needs. So having the flexibility to be able to scale as needed is in the modularity is super important. So yeah, very, very cool to get updated on everything you guys are working on. Obviously, we've been chatting with the Factory Labs team as well, just with Dr. Nick mentioned it earlier, the trigger mod. Rafa shared a post on the forum a few weeks ago now, which outlined some of the minter mods that we've been working on. I just shared it in the chat as well, and the trigger mod is also mentioned in there. And this is also really exciting to be able to try to introduce this modularity into the cat minter contracts, which has become very clear over the past few months that it's definitely needed. So to be able to expand on this front is also really exciting. It's been great to have your guys' support on that front there too. Any questions, any remaining questions for Dr. Nick or Matt before we move on to Areta?
I will just say I think automation is one of the pieces that will facilitate that sort of re-decentralization. Sort of permissionless machines that run on their own don't require people to be permanently plugged into a DAO forum. And largely, like, governance is pretty boring, and the average token holder doesn't want to do it, right? So the path to it is automation, I think. So I think, to supplement the previous answer, Rafa, I think we're on the right track on that front here.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for the presentation. We will move right along to Areta. Bernard, would you like to hop on?
Awesome. Yeah, let me quickly set up the sharing. Awesome. Yeah, and great seeing you folks also on Factory. Funnily enough, we share this presentation call. For context, I think we've been working together closely for the one or other month when we set up the prior TPP. So certainly great to reconnect. Happy to jump in. So similar, I think, setup. We wanted to give a quick rundown on what we do as Areta, what we have been doing already in ZKsycn, and what an application area for a service like ours would be. Just to start, I think the imagination flow on where to be plugged in or where we could collaborate with other folks in the ecosystem. Very quick rundown on us. We're a crypto native investment bank firm, so leaders in the market in M&A and capital markets, and have an on-chain services arm where we basically work with DeFi organizations in capital allocation and growth programs. I've been doing so for a bunch of DeFi DAOs and always between builder support and growth. We are 3 years old, 15 people around the globe, have done $300 million in transactions and programs so far, and looking to grow that over time. The context for us in ZK and ZKsycn ecosystem, I think, is an interesting one, looking at what we have done so far. Some of you might have seen the proposal a couple of months back, I think was the second TPP. At the time, co-developed with Factory Labs, who was on this call, and really is a good, I think, example of the collaboration model or work that we typically do in such a collaboration or context. The program just very quickly in its essence, back then the aim was to move to the ZK chain and app layer. So it was structured really around supporting ZK chains to set up their own growth programs, and had some interesting mechanisms with automated payouts based on on-chain verifiable metrics. So builders or apps would get rewarded by actually performing on KPIs. For that, the toolbox of Factory Labs was used. So it was for us like a wonderland back then, sitting down with Nick and Matt and really thinking through, okay, coming from a strategic objective that we collectively set, also iterated them with the foundation and Meta Labs, to think through how can we make this a reality, and what parts of the toolbox or building blocks that Nick and Matt had already in the drawer can be used to make that a reality. And this is like how we would see our role as well. So we come in as basically the design lead and stakeholder management lead to think through what a program should look like. The biggest lift back then was also really on stakeholder management, so really listening into the foundation, Meta Labs, the Delegate, ZK chains, apps, on the different perspectives on the ecosystem, what seems to be feasible, and also what is needed for builders on that end, and then really taking that input and designing a program. And then on the other part, obviously on the technical side of things, we like to collaborate with builders on that front who can open the toolbox and enable those programs with the right building blocks. Some of the mechanisms that we had in there were, we had a two-staged funding component, which I think was an interesting one to play around with. Basically, looking at where the ecosystem right now is in its state. A lot of feedback was around also reducing risk on capital outlays. So that's certainly something to think through when designing future TPPs. How can you always work in this kind of staged mindset of, okay, what's the MVP 3 months, 6 months pilot with minimal capital outlay to really see if some of the core dynamics work without over-engineering for any of the first instances. And that's certainly something that we took away, and I think is also valuable for any future TPP to come. Second one, interesting one, decision-making committees. Obviously a nuanced topic in the context of token mechanics, where obviously the long-term vision is to set up automated pipes. It should be a system that works in perpetuity without much human intervention. What we were facing in the beginning, though, is in the early stages of a TPP, and also in the early stage of the concept of TPP as a whole, there likely will be committees that are needed for at least veto decisions on funding streams. And this is something that also then we set up and had a bunch of iterations on if the committee should be voted by the community, if the committee should be preset, does it need to have a committee, and so on. I think the bottom line was, and also learning maximal skin in the game from the committee side whenever there is a committee. So ideally these are aligned parties where you can clearly tell that they will act in their best interest, and they have a right to sit on a committee because their lifeline or career depends on the success of ZKsycn, and then also ultimately on the success of a large scale TPP. And then the third one, here the matching mechanism for VC funds. Interesting one, I think nothing to spend too much time on, quite a nuanced topic. Was a big interest back in the days to get more capital to builders early from top tier VCs. So there was just a additional mechanism where we came in and designed that together with some leading VCs to really understand how that could be a reality. So all of this is kind of, a bit of examples and also sharing our experiences from, having done a bunch of iterations on that and what sat well and what didn't sit so well for people on the call or watching. Our role in essence, and I think this is fairly straightforward. If you think about it, the, token mechanics or building blocks on the technical side are done by parties like Factory Labs on this DAO or the other TPP builders on the previous calls, where they really, advance those building blocks that can be used to, automatically function. The second layer, obviously, is a manual effort of coming together, designing a program, managing the stakeholders on various ends, supporting the launch and executing the launch, managing the program on an ongoing basis, and then also reporting and interacting with stakeholders and community on that front. So all of that, we have an in-house team that is specialized on these things and is always curious to spin thoughts also on level one, really first design ideas. We've seen a lot in the space on different sizes and angles of any capital allocation program. So anything that's new and exciting, we always love to discuss. And I think that's pretty much it. I think one insight to share also.
Bernard, one question that I think would be good to just record here on the call is, can you talk a little bit about your role in any programs related, for example, to I know I saw an announcement from Uniswap about the security audit process. Can you talk a little bit about that project and a little bit about kind of how you've been helping? I think you've been helping also with some conditional funding market work. And it'd be good to just get a brief overview of both of those.
Yeah, 100%. I think we also have some case study, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere here. This one is basically a program that we launched for Uniswap 6 months back with an initial pilot of 1 million and now extended it for the next 2 years for a 4.8 million fund. It's just an example of there was a gap within the Uniswap ecosystem of getting cost-efficient audits to builders on scale. The process is somewhat broken. Builders in the ecosystem kind of find their audits by word of mouth or asking around, take some time, and have no price transparency on cost of audits because you typically get 1 or 2 quotes, take some negotiation, and then you either take it or you don't. So what we set up in collaboration with them is Audit Marketplace. It's a very low-tech website where you have 2 sides. We came in and whitelisted one side, so the security auditors, 16, I think, at the time of the pilot. They were then, in collaboration with the foundation, green-lighted and are core part of the supply side. And then the demand side, the builders can come to the marketplace, raise their hand, fill out a form on what audits they need, fill out some of the details, and then immediately get several quotes from those whitelisted providers. So what we've seen there is significant cost reduction through basically the transparency of multiple offers. So you don't get 1 or 2 offers anymore, but on average, I think it was 8-point-something offers per builder, and they can freely pick based on their economic and quality preferences. And what you see there is, it's a massive unlock because typically audit prices vary from 30K to 200K for the same audit. So this is a mechanism that then solves that. As an example of collaboration, also our role there was basically the full-fledged design of the program operations, rollout, reporting, and so on. And then we have a partner on, the foundation side who guides us strategically and connects us to the right builders. To connect it to ZKSync, I think similarly, goes along the topics I just discussed, right? Design, management, stakeholder management, and reporting. On the future side, I can't claim that much, to be honest. I wished we are in touch with Butter, and we had some very creative sessions together on what a larger program could look like on that side. It's still in process mode, so in progress mode. So hopefully with some updates down the road on where this could go.
And one additional question, Bernard. I think you guys have a very broad scope across a variety of different organizations. Based on the projects that you've seen and the projects that are emerging over this year, what are the projects that you think have had maybe the most impact? Because I think a lot of the conversations over the past couple of years was around the inefficiency of programs and the lack of impact of programs. I think this is a common question with regards to, for example, the Arbitrum gaming proposal. Is it having impact? Does it really matter? So I'm kind of curious from your perspective, what you're seeing for this year, and from the programs from the last couple of years, which programs do you think had the most impact that you think that are applicable to ZKSync overall or to the industry as a whole that need to be emulated and executed more?
Yeah, 100%. I think the biggest theme that we generally see is the more proactive the capital allocation, the worse, I would say. I'm very generalizing here, obviously. And the broader the capital allocation, also the worse. So these really large-scale type grant programs that we all came from, right? Started a couple of years back, and were kind of the market standard for a long time. They generally don't produce great results because we have a lot of problems, obviously, in the market, right? All of us know that grant farming exists. There's very little accountability. Ecosystems also have no visibility on what they're actually funding and what happens with those type of projects. So in that sense, the ROI was relatively low, and that's also led to kind of a market-wide sentiment of many large ecosystems that nobody likes grants, and grants don't make sense anymore. What we see work out, or where I'm the most kind of convinced on, is really this approach of organically building an ecosystem. And you have many, even chains, but also, on the app layer, really taking this approach. Okay, we don't want to go abroad. We have our first, batch of 10 to 20 projects that we have full visibility on, but then also support on many different areas, kind of in a more bespoke setup. So it's not only, okay, we spray and pray grants, but really work together with those teams, see if we can connect them to the right investors, also have visibility on their plans so they don't wander off to another ecosystem. How can we retain them? People talk about also convertible grants now is a big topic. So in essence, I think one takeaway really is to define that early group of core builders early on, make a decision to then support them with more bespoke support rather than only capital, and then they're incentivized to wander off to another ecosystem. And I mean, in ZKSync, the ZK chains are obviously one, is already that type of target group. So it's an interesting angle, obviously, to take these and support them on an ongoing basis. And know that there also have been considerations on how could those be enabled more potentially with a standard layer, because several chains have several or have similar problems to some extent. So there would be an opportunity, I think, to have some type of bespoke support services that you can roll out across different ZK chains that you're kind of keen to collaborate over a longer time, potentially even facilitate knowledge exchange between them, what worked well and what didn't work well, and so on. Long-winded answer, but I think the gist is clear from broad to more narrow and bespoke support.
I think when you're mentioning that, something that kind of came to mind is think about ZKsync and the focus on interoperability and like institutions. I think an important question for us to ask as we think about kind of like, well, the market conditions today is how do you create a program that can scale up and down for where the market is, but still targeting with impact, kind of like that overarching strategy of winning like the institutional space and also activating interoperability, because even cross-chain interoperability today is not necessarily, it's still like an emerging area, and it's not like every app is looking for multi-chain execution. So I think that raises an interesting question. How do you identify the players that have the most impact? How do you support them in a way that scales up and down, that doesn't have like, doesn't require like, you know, $5 million per player to actually support them? And then how do you do that with the players that you think will will deliver the most impact for like the network as a whole versus necessarily individually? So I think, yeah, I think a lot of those questions are coming up right now.
I think there's also a lot of this, you know, a lot goes also into visibility of what do the different projects actually want, right? Like not every ZK chain probably is also a fan of interoperability or has a different vision on, you know, centralizing more, I mean, no, it's the right word, but accruing more activity on their own chain versus, you know, working together with other ecosystems and so on. So where do these strategies align between, you know, the top layer and then also the different participants? I think it's always, I mean, gets very nitty gritty, but certainly an interesting challenge to work through.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bernard, for sharing not only your presentation but your candor on Rafa's questions here. Any questions for Bernard or Areta? I particularly appreciated, Bernard, you sharing or highlighting the kind of early stage that token programs or token mechanics are in. Governance launched not that long ago, and Ignite was the first program to go through, and Catalyst was the second one to be discussed on the forum. And I think over these last few months and through these programs, we've learned a lot. And over more recently, the past few months, I think there's been some good headway made on helping outline or describe token mechanics a little bit more, and also I think finding what works best, especially for teams like Areta, and where they kind of fit within this token program model, and how they can, even though not providing a technical service, still offering you know, a very useful service for token programs and token program management. So yeah, thank you for sharing that today.
Yeah, likewise. We love to play the guinea pig together with Peculiars for some time, but no, honestly, you've guys been obviously doing a great job on trying to move this forward and moving this forward, and it's a huge ambition, huge vision behind, and this also, I think, where all of the people on this call are so keen to somehow find an angle to make it happen. So yeah, so kudos to you guys moving this.
Wow, Rafa, we're really getting our ego stroked on this call today. Thank you, Bernard, for that. But yeah, that's we're appreciative. We're understanding that this may have been a frustrating process to onboard to, or to kind of get on board with, but it really has been really fun to work with different folks and different teams and kind of brainstorm of this future vision of pipes and kind of automized mechanics, what that could look like within ZKsync. And it's been a fun ride with a lot of folks so far, and we're excited to continue that work through the rest of the year and beyond. So thank you guys. Again, thank you to Dr. Nick and Matt from Factory Labs, and to Bernard from Areta for their presentations today. Again, these were probably the last TPP Builder presentations we'll have for a while. They're never officially closed. If somebody wants to present in the future, that's totally fine. We can definitely make time for that. But for now, this will probably be like the soft close to the series. And as always, I will have the call recording posted tomorrow, along with notes and any links shared throughout the call. If there are no other items, then we will close it out here. So thanks, everyone, and have a great rest of your week.